Welcome to Dream Farm. I want to do a really quick video on when to spray your beans. And that may not be quite as obvious as it seems on the surface because there's issues related to deer pressure. The timing becomes more critical when you're trying to keep the deer from eating the beans. So I'm standing in a patch right now, and off to my right, part of it, I sprayed that maybe a couple weeks ago. Just happened to be going through here from spraying a different spot and just made one swath there. So you can see what the beans look like in the spot that was sprayed 2 weeks ago. And I'll show you what they look like in this little stretch where I'm standing that didn't get sprayed. So the weeds are a lot taller here. And you know, the idea, of course, what I'm getting at is the weeds will protect the beans, hide the beans from the deer, and I'm sure a lesser extent from the turkeys. When the beans pop up, they've got that little seed is part of the I think I don't know what they call those first two leaves, but it's the dicotyledons of the seed come out of the ground, and that's what forms, you know, the first bit of the corn plant or the bean plant, and then it grows above that. Well, if you nip it off as soon as that pops out of the ground, that's the growing point, and you've got no bean. So it's really critical, and the turkeys are very they're very guilty of nipping those beans off when they first pop out of the ground with that seed coming up above the surface. I'm sure it's, you know, a real delicacy to them. Well, then you got, like I said, you've got no bean. That plant is done. So the whole idea is to keep these things protected as long as you possibly can. So I'm gonna take a break right here and present our sponsors. But before I do that, I want to tell you about another series that I'm doing for Hunt Stand. On their YouTube channel, I'll put a link in the description. I've been producing another deer property land management series for them called Deer Dirt. And I think it's topics that, you know, might be of interest to you guys too. So check those out as well. We're gonna catch up with our sponsors, then I'll be right back. Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute. Research equals results. Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail app. Hoyt Archery. Wildlife Farming. And PH Outdoors. Okay, so like I said, the idea is to get the beans concealment, camouflage, for as long as possible before you spray and clean up the weeds. And some years that's going to be sooner because it's dry and the weeds are really competing for the moisture. But years like this, where it's been a lot of rain, the moisture is not the issue. So it's the nutrients and the sunlight that start to become the issue. And I think that I'm at that point with this part. So I'm gonna compare and contrast. You'll see a big difference in the height, or at least the density of the beans on that side and the ones on this side. Because on that side, the deer and the turkeys could see them as soon as they popped out of the ground. And over here, they've been hidden. So let's take a quick look. It's interesting to note that in the spots where the ground is open for whatever reason, this was a cornfield last year, so there's probably a little bit of carryover of herbicide control. So there's a few spots that are fairly open. In those areas, there aren't hardly any beans, you know, compared to the areas that are, you know, more full of weeds. There's a few spots here that maybe have gone too far, but like I said, it's at about that level right now, just above the tops of the beans, where, you know, the beans are, I'd say, a foot tall, and they can sustain a little bit of deer pressure now because the deer can eat the tops of the beans and the beans will keep growing. But it's when they're really small and the deer hit them when they're really small, that's when they can wipe them right out. I don't need to keep talking about the same topic. I'm sure you get it. you want to wait for as long as you can before you clean them up. The question is, when is that point where the grass and the weeds are starting to impact the beans? I'd say here it's starting to happen. And this will clean up quick. It's mostly grass. You know, when I spray this, that will clean right up and that grass will drop down and the beans will work up through. There's another spot in this field though where, you know, over here, I think it's probably a little bit too tall. It might be, I won't say it's too late, but you know, you definitely don't want to have very much of your field look like that before you spray. And it's such a small spot that it's not like it's going to hurt anything, but that's pretty much my breakdown. It has less to do with the agronomy than it does to do with just managing the pressure from the deer. You know, I started planting food plots in 1995. That farm had a really high number of deer. So I got off on the, I won't say the wrong foot, but man, what a learning curve. I planted an awful lot of stuff that didn't survive. And then little by little, you start to find tricks to get the food plots and the things that you're planting past the deer. And even though I don't have a ton of deer here, they really love the beans. There aren't very many beans around this neighborhood, and they're just going to pound on these beans if I don't, like I said, kind of hide them just a little bit as they're coming up. Well, hopefully that was helpful to you. I appreciate you joining me, and I'll see you back here again soon for the next episode of Dream Farm. Remember to always dream big.